Well, I got the job, the Evil Dead 2 cabin. Doug Beswick called me up. I had worked with him before on Aliens. So he called me up, asked me if I was available, and I said, oh, sure. It was going to be our famous old crew. We'd have Doug and Jim McPearl and me. So I built the platform of the model and then proceeded to make the trees. The trees had to be made a different look, not just the normal kind. So I had to match about three, four trees that had to be actually made to look like the fake trees that were in the shot. I had to actually make fake trees look fake. And the other trees, and then of course I flocked them. And to keep them that way, because I knew if the animator bumped them, things would flocking would fall down. So I took hairspray and hairsprayed a lot on those trees to make them stick the way they should. The only one little in joke was that we had Sigourney Beaver legs because it was just the lower torso and stuck it way in the back so that no one would actually recognize it. But we have our little in jokes every now and then. We throw that in there. The cabin, Jim Pearl helped me work out the perspective on it. Pretty much a three-quarter house, and it was really skewed. You could only use it for one shot, and everything had to be made in that skewed form. The port swing was literally glued, weird looking. Anyways, Jim was good at helping me on the perspective on that one. And then afterwards, after I painted the cabin, Jim said that he did a wedge test and it's coming up way too orange to splash it with green. And I thought, green? It took me three times to splash green paint over the paint that I did. He said because the hot lights were making the model and the browns that I was using look way too orange, which, he was always good that way with his, wedge tests. Tony Gardner came over to me and said, you should put some leaves in there. And I said, I know, but I'm not quite sure what to do because they have to be really locked down. And I put a little white glue down and sprinkled the oatmeal on it and then went through and painted it. And it kind of got a little sloshy, but when it hardened and it looked real good. So that was a nice little trick that I was to learn. I was to learn a lot of tricks. They were very knowledgeable about things. So I'm very thankful for those people. The cabin itself was made out of real thin hobby plywood. And when I got to the roof piece, because it had a little bit of a sway back to it, I decided to use sheet copper. You could buy them in rolls over at KitKraft. So I rolled that down and trimmed it to the side, and it gave it that old fashioned look for those old roof pieces that were made that way. There was a figure in the window, and to this day, I don't really know which figure I grabbed off the shelf, but I could have sworn that I grabbed a Star Wars figure. And yeah, if it was Han Solo. And I just stuck it in the window. I didn't even bother painting it because it was just supposed to be a silhouette. And there was an extension to the set that stuck out a little bit. And that was where these hands were supposed to shoot up into the shot. All of it was incredibly forced. Those were life size looking hands, yeah, that only went about 3 feet, and there the cabin was. It was so close. The ground that I used, because Doug was going to have to drill into this and put locks on his figures and locks on the animated pieces, I had to have make sure that it was, the stones that were all in the shot were not real stones. And so I made a pad, like a rubber pad, that was made out of, I could put Bondo in it and lay it down on the wood so that when it was time for him to drill through, it was real soft that he could drill through it and it wasn't like rocks. The mean tree was just like blocks of wood that I put together and little bits of tree pieces we found. And I used paper mache with glue, white glue, and a fork to sculpt it. Like I say, I'm not a good sculptor, but I find ways, and it turned out okay. that mean tree was used for close-up shots of the dancing corpse. I had to make sure that, Doug wasn't going to lean on the tree and it all of a sudden snap. So I had to really make sure that the understructure was pieced very well together. That's something that could ruin a whole shot. And there was later on, I guess, kind of a hazy smoke that was added optically into the shot. So it gave it that creepy look. I wasn't on the show at that time. I had finished doing what I had to do, and it took a long time to do that stuff. I was all by myself when it came to making all that stuff. I didn't have any crew and assistant, and it still went fine. We didn't go over budget, and they seemed to like that. And they were very happy with Doug and the animation that he got on that.